And I think I'm back. Hopefully you're still there, everyone. Let's see. Am I connected? Am I connected now? If you can hear me, if you can see me, please send me a message so I will know that you're there. And that will be great. Okay, so let's begin with, okay, hello, Alain. Good to see you there. Hopefully Shelly and Bonnie are still there too. Okay. Hi, Debbie. Welcome. So let's begin studying a little bit about this week's Parsha. In fact, this is today we are going to study, yes, a little bit of the Parsha. But in general, moving forward for the next few weeks, we're going to start the preparation for the high holidays. So hopefully we'll be able to have some study on Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, Teshuvah, and so many things that are important in these days to get ready for the high holidays the proper way. Okay? So be aware of that. But today, yes, we are going to study a little bit about this week's Parsha. The name of the Parsha is Shoftim, which means judges. And it's basically, let me put the first slide so you will see right away what I'm talking about here. As you can see, the Parsha opens by saying, Shoftim veshotrim titen lecha bechol shearecha. You shall appoint judges and officers in all your gates that the Lord your God is giving you according to your tribes, and they shall judge the people with righteous judgment. Yeah, this is a very interesting concept because the Torah specifies that it's a mitzvah, it's a commandment to have a system of judges, just to guarantee that we can have a civilized nation of Israel, where it's going to be justice and things are going to be the right way. But the Torah is also implying that judges by themselves are not enough. It also said officers. So after the judge hears the case and the judge determines, who is guilty and who is not, then you need officers to enforce whatever the judge has to say. So in other words, we need both elements in a society. You need the judge, but you need the officers. One without the other is not good. You can't just have officers. That is, in these days, how you call it, a vigilante, right? That you, a person who will enforce whatever that person thinks is right or wrong without a judge saying so. And that is wrong according to the Torah. So this parsha will start saying that you need both. Shoftim and Shotrim. Now, this is interesting. It says in all your gates. Well, there are different ways to understand the word gates in this context. The first one is just literally, you understand gates as the gates of a city. But the other way, and this is where I would like to discuss with you a little bit, is to take the word gate in a different way. Let me show you the next text and you will see what I'm talking about here. Listen to this. It says, the human body is a city with 7 gates, 7 portals to the outside world. The 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 nostrils, and the mouth. Here too, it is incumbent upon us to place internal judges to discriminate and regulate what should be admitted and what should be kept out, and officers to enforce the judges' decisions. Wow, what an interesting way to understand this verse of the Torah. What is the word that I'm trying to use here? I lost it for a second. It's an allegory. The verse is an allegory. Of course, it's talking about real judges in real gates, because back in the days, that was the place where the judges used to sit, at the entrance of the city, at the gates. But it's also important to understand that we, each human being, we also have gates that they have to be protected in different ways. You need a judge, and you need an officer to enforce that. Shelley, you said Kabbalistic. I don't think that's Kabbalistic at all. I think it's very practical advice that we are getting here from the rabbis. Very, very interesting and very practical advice. So let's talk a little bit about these gates that, according to the rabbis, we all have. So the two eyes. Well, this is actually very important, because usually we judge things that we see, and we make assumptions based on what we see every day. And when I see what I see, I mean, I'm not talking just about some situation that you see, but also about something that you read, because you need your two eyes based on that. Raise your hand if you ever heard the word fake news. Yeah, I hope everybody is raising your hands on the other side of the screen. But basically, fake news is something that you see, that you read somewhere. And then you make assumptions of a situation based on that, but it's fake, it's not real. But how do you know that it's real or not, unless that you take your time to analyze the evidence? And who does that? That's a judge. That will be presented, you will present a case to a judge, there will be evidence, and the judge will determine how the thing really is, or what really happened. So in these days, I will believe fake news are a thing, because people don't take the time to analyze things to the depths that things deserve to be analyzed, to judge things. We just take it for granted, and that is absolutely wrong. But this is the thing. You see, even if you take the time to think and to analyze, and you chew on it, you still need the officers to enforce that. That means that if you really know that that's something that is not real, you still have to either delete it or avoid it. It has to be another step. It has to be done with that. And same thing, you see the second portal that the rabbis say that we have are the 2 ears, again, for things that we hear around. Things that we hear around. Gossip. We all suffer that. People who come to you with juicy news. They come, have you heard about this? Right? But then, hold on a minute. Remember, you need to have a judge in your ear filtering whatever comes to you. And then you have to have an officer to say, okay, stop, enough. I don't want to hear your gossip. I'm not an ashtray for you to dump, your garbage on me. It's very important. You need both. So I will say that the most common two are these two, the eyes and the ears. They are gates that come into you. Same with the nostrils. That things with talking about smells and things. But then you have the mouth. The mouth is very interesting because the mouth will have two directions. Ears and eyes have only one direction. They come from the outside to the inside. Same with the nostrils, and even though I guess you can argue that you can use it also in the breathing process. But the mouth is very interesting because the mouth could be used to put things into your body, but the mouth could also be used to get things out of your body in the sense that you use it to talk. Is what we use to be able to communicate and to say things to other people. So the mouth is the most important one to protect, in the sense that whatever you say to others, you have to be extremely careful. And that's why the rabbis say that the mouth is the one that has double protection, in the sense that it has two walls. One is the teeth, and the other one the lips, because you need that double protection. And the other one that is very dangerous are the eyes. And that's why the eyes, even though the protection is not as solid as the mouth, it still has a little protection, the eyelids. Very thin, very subtle, but still there to remind you that something that sometimes it has to be protected, because that's the most common way that we have to get information into our body, and we have to be sure what kind of information you let into your brain. Sometimes the thing is we get too much toxicity into our bodies. The same way that we say sometimes that we have to be careful of what we eat, because eventually what you eat is going to affect yourself. But the same way you have to be careful what you see, because that is also affecting you. It's also bringing toxicity. And then we don't understand why we get anxious, we get bitter. It's because most of the time for things that we allow to get into our lives unfiltered. So the filter is important, and I believe the opening of this parsha is a reminder of that. Let's see some of the comments that we have here. Shelly says self-control, and protection from Lashon Hara. You're right. Yeah. The sound keep freezing. Anybody else had the same problem with the sound, that it keeps freezing? Oh, it could be. For some reason, I can see here. That's very interesting. I don't know why. I don't know. Hopefully it will be better in a minute. Let's keep moving. Brief delay. Okay. I don't have anything wrong on my streamer, but I do notice that the internet is not stable today. That I have noticed. That I did. Let's see if I can see something here. Maybe if I change the server. I don't know. Okay, let's keep moving. Let's keep moving. We have, do not judge alone, for no one can judge alone but the one. This is also a recommendation for the judges as well. Debbie, you said when they will start blowing the shofar? Tomorrow. Even though today is Rosh Chodesh, it's not really Rosh Chodesh. It's sometimes when the Hebrew month has 30 days, the last day of the month is considered Rosh Chodesh, beginning of the month, but the technical beginning of the month is tomorrow. Tomorrow is the 1st of Elul, and that's when we start blowing the shofar. And I don't think it's a coincidence that we read this parsha right before Elul, talking about the judge, because as we read here in Pirkei Avot, the God, the one, is the one who is going to judge us during Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. And the shofar is a reminder that we have to wake up and to pay attention at everything that we did and how we can do it better for next year. So I think it's interesting, the advice of Pirkei Avot: do not judge alone. Do not judge alone, for no one can judge alone but the one. That means that sometimes it's a sign of humility to recognize that we don't know everything. And even those things might look one way, maybe it's something totally different. And the fact that we are humble enough to ask and to and to double check is a sign that we become better people. Now let's study a little bit about the courts in Judaism, and this is very interesting. You will see in a minute. Whoops. What I'm talking about here. It said monetary matters are decided by a court of 3 judges. This is from the Talmud, by the way. Capital crime by a tribunal of 23 judges. From where is this derived? For it is written in the book of Numbers, and the community shall judge, and the community shall save. We need a community of judges arguing to convict the accused, and a community of judges arguing to exonerate him. Thus, we have 20. A community indicates a minimum of 10, right? We know that for a minyan. And a conviction requires a majority of 2. We are going to see that in a minute. This is coming from the book of Exodus. And a court of law cannot have an even number of judges. You can't have a tie. Thus, we need 23 judges. 22, so that there should be a majority of 2 over 10 saving judges, and another judge, so that the court should not be even numbered. And this is from the Talmud. But now, this is very interesting. It's something that I wanted to share with you for a while. Where is the source that we have for the minyan, right? Because how do we know that a community equals 10? And you can see that once we define that the community is 10, then that principle, that halachic principle, will be applied to many halachic decisions, as we see here, that once the word community was defined as 10, then the rabbis and the Talmud, in the Talmud, when they discuss the topic of the judges, then they have the information of how many judges are needed for different cases. But everything starts by defining the word community. And that's what we're going to see in a minute. Let's see here, David Pollack, what qualities make someone a judge? Who decides? Well, we know that what the qualities for a judge. In fact, the Torah will say specifically all the things that the judge should not do. But in general, they were appointed by the community back in the day. They didn't have universities as we have in these days. Back in the day, they were usually elders with good reputations that they were appointed by the community, so they will serve as judges. So let's talk a little bit about this word community and how do we know that a community equals 10. Now, this is very interesting because there is a principle that is applied by the rabbis to come to that conclusion, to the conclusion that the community is 10. The principle is called Gezerah Shava. It's something that the rabbis use to learn new things based on the connection of 2 or 3 verses. And that is done by the same word appearing in 2 different verses, and then you connect those 2 verses together. Now, the tricky thing of Gezerah Shava is you can't just go to the Torah and create your own decisions based on Gezerah Shava. The rabbis put a safeguard to that principle, to that method, to that methodology of learning, by saying that the Gezerah Shava, these connections of verses, were passed to us by oral tradition. So they basically knew which verses are connected, and we are not at freedom to go and make our own connections based on the same word appearing in two different verses. I hope that's clear, because it's very important. This is something that it was passed to us, and we take it for granted because it was passed by the rabbis through oral tradition. Remember, we are rabbinic Jews. We have the Torah, and we also have the oral law that we believe it was taught to Moses by God, and then Moses taught all that oral information to Joshua, and then Joshua to the elders, and so forth. He kept passing from generation to generation. It was lots of information there that is not written in the Torah, but the rabbis, when they wrote the Talmud, will use that information to make halachic decisions. Now, can I prove that that came from the words of Moses? Of course, I cannot. This is something that enters into the realm of belief in Judaism. There is no way to actually prove the oral law as a fact. And this is something I'm going to sound a little philosophical here. I believe it's truth, but I cannot prove it's a fact. And I will leave it there. So let's see how we learn the word community. Now, there is a verse in the book of Numbers, chapter 14, verse 27, that is talking about the 12 spies. Remember that Moses sent 12 spies to the land of Canaan, the land of Israel, to learn about the land. So then the spies will come back, they will report, and they will actually plan accordingly how to conquer that land. Now, this is the interesting thing, because 10 of the 12 spies kind of misunderstood their mission, and instead of just reporting what they saw, they, on top of that, tried to convince everybody else that it was impossible and they should all go back to Egypt. In other words, they discouraged purposely the Jewish people. And God was very angry, very, very angry at them, because that was not their place. That was not their task to do. And this is the way God is talking about these 10 spies who spoke against the land of Israel and discouraged the Jewish people. Basically, it says, At matai la'edah hara'a azot. How long will this wicked community grumble against me? You see that these 10 people were called a community, edah. So this is very interesting, because now at least we have a connection with the word, from the word community with the number 10, because God is talking about the 10 spies, and God called them edah, community. Okay? Now, there are other two verses. This is a little bit complex, but please follow me. This is fascinating. There is another verse in the book of Leviticus that it says, You shall not profane my holy name, that I may be sanctified in the midst of the Israelite people. I, the Lord, who sanctified you. So the rabbis found the word here, betoch, which means in the midst, okay, betoch in Hebrew. And then they connected the verse on Leviticus 23:32 using Gezerah Shava with the verse on Numbers 16:21 that it says, Stand back from the midst of the community that I might annihilate them in an instant. So the word mitoch appears again, and the word community appears again. So connecting the three verses, the rabbis understand that community equals 10. Now, there is another verse that they will say that God will be sanctified in the midst of a community. So how much is community? Well, we have the connection with the number 10. Can a community be less than 10? Maybe, but we don't have any proof of that from the Torah. The only connection we can make is to the number 10. And that's why community, the minimum for a community equals 10. And that's why the minyan, where the name of God could be sanctified, equals 10. That's why we cannot recite the Kedusha during the Amidah without a minyan. Debbie Pollack, you said, isn't the word ud? Or I think you mean ed, a witness. Yeah, but this is a different concept here. Here, edah means the community. Yeah. Let's go to the next one. This is when we are. I was talking before. The advice that the Torah is telling the judges. So God said to the judges, "You are not to distort justice or show favoritism, and you are not to accept a bribe, for a gift blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of even the upright." This is very important. Very important to understand that perhaps the most important advice that the Torah gives the judges is to avoid bribes. Now, the interesting thing here is whenever we think about bribes, we think about money or gifts, right? And that's the most common thing. I have to agree, that's probably the most common bribe, is some kind of something that has some kind of monetary value. But bribe could be something more complex than that. For example, listen to this text here. This is brilliant. An impoverished widow once came to the Beit Din of the great sage Rabbi Yeshua Kotner. Weeping bitter tears, she begged him to summon to the court a man she accused of having wronged her. Rabbi Joshua summoned the man to appear before the court, but referred the case to another rabbi, refusing to preside over it himself. The Torah forbids the taking of bribes, he explained. Do you think that a bribe is only a gift of money? Tears can also be a bribe that blinds the eyes of the wise, especially the tears of a poor widow. Why do you think sometimes when certain groups try to influence people through media, they will use images of injured kids or crying mothers? It's a way, according to this advice from the Torah, it's a way to blind the perception of reality. In other words, according to this, it's interesting because they take it as a bribe, but that's why we have to be very careful and to filter carefully whatever we have in front of our eyes. And sometimes feeling manipulations could be a form of bribing somebody to do certain things. And sometimes we don't even realize that we are taking a bribe by letting our feelings being manipulated. And this is very important to realize that. And is the audio still cutting in and out? I would like to know if somebody can type it there. Because I've been looking at my window here and it seems that the stream is a little better from my end. So I would like to know. It's okay now. Yeah. For some reason before the internet was shaky. Now it's in the green zone again. Very good. Let's go to the next one. Lots of great verses in this week's parsha. Oh, this is a favorite. Tzedek tzedek tirdof. למען תחיה וירשת את הארץ אשר אדוני אלוהיך נותן לך. Yeah, you probably heard this one. Justice, only justice you must pursue. Or sometimes it's justice, justice you must pursue, so that you will live and inherit the land Adonai your God is giving you. This is something that has lots of different explanation. Why the repetition of the word tzedek, justice? You probably know the word tzedek with the word tzedakah, right? We usually translate as charity, but it's not charity. It's righteousness, and because it's something that is the right thing to do. But here we have a repetition of the word tzedek. As you can see here from the translation, there is already an interpretation implied on the translation of these Hebrew words. When it says, justice, only justice you must pursue. That's one interpretation. But what does it mean, justice, only justice? That pay attention? No, I think it's beyond that, paying attention. Because the thing is sometimes, and we all know this, you can actually know for a fact that somebody is guilty, but you don't have proof. So what can you do if you don't have proof that somebody is guilty? Well, you can actually create fake evidence to convict somebody. And some people will feel okay by doing that because you know that the person is guilty. And then, yes, technically you might think, or you might feel, or you might argue that justice was served, but not through justice means. In other words, justice has to be served by just means. And that's what is a justice. Only justice you must pursue. In other words, we have to be careful the way we do it, because otherwise it's a corruption to the system to start creating fake evidence to put somebody in jail. And that's usually the way this verse is understood. And yes, the other interpretation is like Shelley, that you say that yes, there is something very important, right? Tzedek tirdof, justice you must pursue. Yeah, that could be another way of reading the verse. But otherwise it sounds to me like Bond, James Bond, right? It's but they are. My favorite interpretation is, as I mentioned before, is that tzedek means that the justice should be justice by itself, just by itself. It should not be corrupted. It should not be twisted. It should not be faked. It should be real, even though sometimes it's difficult to reach that. So let's read here. See what this rabbi have to say. Why does the verse repeat itself? Is there a just justice and an unjust justice? Indeed, there is. The Torah is telling us to be just also in pursuit of justice. Both the end and the means by which it is obtained must be just. It's a very profound concept that we have here. Very profound. Let's move on. The concept of justice is something that is repeated all over the Torah, and the rabbis talk a lot about that. So I want to share with you a few rabbinic insights on the concept of justice, and it's going to come from Pirkei Avot and from the Talmud. And it goes like this. Pirkei Avot will say, by virtue of three things the world endures: law, truth, and peace. And the rabbis understand that the order of the words is not a coincidence, it's not random. Law, truth, and peace. One should create the other. Law needs the truth, and the two together create peace. If one is missing, then you can never reach peace. You need law, but you also need truth. That's what tzedek means. Justice, justice, law and truth. And that creates peace. The next one is from, it's an interpretation of the Pirkei Avot from the Talmud. This is from the Talmud from Jerusalem. That's why you will see there that it says TJ. Well, that's not a mistake from my part. You see, here I will mark it. It says TJ instead of TB. Not a mistake, not a typo. It's because it's Talmud from Jerusalem. He said the three are one and the same. If the law is upheld, there is truth and there is peace. Very nice. And then the Babylonian Talmud says a judge who judges with absolute truth becomes a partner with God in creation, because one of the ways we call God is also truth. The word of God is truth. Let's move on to the next verse. Let's see if I can move this a little bit. There. If a case comes before you at your city gate, which is too difficult for you to judge, concerning bloodshed, civil suit, personal injury, or any other controversial issue, you are to get up, go to the place which Adonai your God will choose, and appear before the Kohanim, who are Levites, and the judge in office at the time. Seek their opinion, and they will render a verdict for you. And this is very interesting, because basically what it's saying is, well, the key word here is the judge in office at the time. At that time, we tend to think that everything that happened before was better. Everything was better before, and now we don't have the talent that we used to have before. We don't have the knowledge that we used to have before. But it says, no. When you have a problem, you have to go to the experts of your time, because they will be knowledgeable, not just in the law, but in the context of the times that you are living. And this is very important, because it's also, this principle is applied for halachic decisions. Yes, it is important to read precedents, but at the end of the day, the ones who are going to tell you what to do are the rabbis who live in this generation, who understand this world. Taking legislation that comes from 500 years ago, for example, might be very interesting, but might be obsolete for the kind of issues that we have in these days. So yes, it is important to be familiar what other judges say or did before, but we always have to trust on the sages of our generation. Very important concept. See, let me read this for you. And then here the Talmud says, can a person then go to a judge who is not in his days? This is to teach us that although this judge may not be of the same stature of other judges who preceded him, you must listen to him, for you have only the judge who lives in your time. Samuel in his generation is like Iftach in his generation. Samuel is regarded as the greatest of the prophets, equal to Moses and Aaron together. Iftach, who served as judge in the 1982 to 1962 BCE, came from a lowly background and was guilty of many failings. But he was the judge at the time. So we have to sometimes learn to trust our leaders in this generation without making the mistake of comparing our leaders with people who lived 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 years ago, or 1,000 years ago, or 2,000 years ago. It's nice and it's important to be familiar with other people say, but it's also important to understand our leaders as well. And I thought it was a very meaningful verse from this week's Parsha. Let's go to the next one. As I will start to wrap up this class, I don't want to make it too long. I know that, I don't know if this time is still okay now that more people are going back to work and the summer is coming to an end. So I'm open to feedback to see if maybe the time and the day for this class is not as easy anymore. So if you have any comments, please let us know during the week. Let's go to the next text. Okay, another verse from this week's Parsha that it says, and this is something very interesting. There must not be found among you a soothsayer, a diviner, or of times, or one who interprets omens, or a sorcerer, or a charmer, or a pithom sorcerer, or a idoa sorcerer, or a necromancer. For whoever does these things is detestable to Adonai, and because of these abominations, Adonai your God is driving them out ahead of you. Let me explain first each one of these names, because it looks like each one of these categories is different. But you can see the point here that it seems to imply that the Torah it's encouraging people not to go visit this kind of people, which in these days could be translated perhaps into psychics or tarot readers, etc. So let's see these categories mentioned in the Torah first. It says, soothsayer is one who takes his rod in his hand and says, as though to consult it, shall I go or shall I not go? So in other words, it's somebody that you don't know what to do. You go to visit this person, and the person will take his rod in his hand and will look at this. Maybe it's almost like looking at the crystal ball, right? It's basically the same principle, different element, but the same principle. And then he will say, should I go? Should I not go? Should I stay? Or should I go? Wasn't that a song? Yeah, that was a song, right? Should I stay or should I go? But you get the point. You get the point. Just to go to somebody for you to make decisions. So you don't want to make your own decisions. So you go, you see a soothsayer will tell you what to do. A diviner of times. According to Rabbi Akiva, these are people who determine the times, saying such and such a time is good to begin a venture. The other sages say, however, that this refers to those who catch the eyes. That means they deceive, but by creating optical illusions. But again, we are talking about people who cannot make their own decisions. You have to start your own business. You want to know if that school will be good for you, if that's university. I received 2 letters. I don't know which one to accept. And then you go to see a diviner or diviner of times, and it will tell you, this is a good place to go, or this is a good time to start your business, or this is not a good time to start your business based on the elements that I have here. I don't know what kind of rituals they will use. You see, some rabbis think that they were creating some kind of illusions, and then based on those illusions, they will trick you to do something. And now, this is the interesting thing, because here in the Talmud, it's not that they are saying that it's real or not real. It's just saying that you should not do it. And then this is going to be a controversy for the times within Judaism about if all this kind of arts to be able to predict the future or to let you know if something is doable or not is a real skill, is a real thing, or fake. There is the magic. Is it real or not? The rabbis are kind of divided for that. And it's something to have into consideration, that they are divided in that. Okay. Then we have one who interprets omens. That means bread falling from its mouth, a deer crossing his path, or his stick falling from his hand. So basically, when something happened to you and you say, oh, this might mean something. So you go to this person, you tell this person what happened to you, and he will tell you what you have to do or not. The charmer, one who collects snakes, scorpions, and other creatures into one place, and I guess it will tell you what to do with that. The python sorcerer, the sorcerer raises the spirits of the dead, and it speaks from the sorcerer's armpit, whatever. But this is it's almost like a psychic, that it talks to the dead, and it will tell you what to do based on what the dead is saying. Then you have Idoa sorcerer. The sorcerer inserts the bone of the animal called Idoa into his mouth, and the bone speaks by means of sorcery. And then you have a necromancer, is one who raises the dead spirits upon his membrum, or one who consults a skull. That used to be very common back in the day. And we even have the precedent in the Bible of King Saul going to consult one of these people to raise up the dead, to ask them for advice. But the Torah says that all this is forbidden by Jewish law. It doesn't say if it's real or not. In fact, as I mentioned before, it's controversial. It just said that Jews don't do that. Jews trust in God and in God only, and we don't need this kind of trickery to move on in life. So this is what I prepared to share with you today. If you have any questions, the chat is open. I will wait a few minutes, a couple of minutes here for you to give your comments. And please remember to subscribe, very important. And you have to click on the bell there. And that's that will be. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for connecting today. It was great to have you there. It's been a long wait, but we are finally back in business, studying together. And as I mentioned before, we are going to start preparing together for the high holidays starting next week, where we are going to start studying about Teshuvah, then Rosh Hashanah, and Yom Kippur. Thank you again so much for tuning in, for connecting, and have a wonderful day. Stay safe. Hope to see you soon. Bye for now.